Hello and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate, where we help dads create a healthier and less traumatic divorce. My name is Jude and I'm your host. And today we are going to be talking about love hacks. But first, I wanted to thank everybody who has been downloading and listening to the podcast. We are approaching 10,000 downloads, which is an absolutely amazing, at least for me. So I'm not Joe Rogan, but for me, 10,000 is an amazing milestone. And I appreciate everybody that's listening. And let's just continue. The community is continuing to build, share, like this, share it with other divorced dads, and let's keep the momentum going. We got some workshops coming up, another class August 22nd. So let's just keep it rolling. So today, my guest is known for his commitment to making disciples and planting churches. He has personally started 4 churches in the urban centers of San Francisco, California, and my hometown of Denver, Colorado. He currently pastors Restoration Church here in Denver, which has been instrumental in starting over 40 traditional churches, and in 2019 was counted among the top 10 multiplying churches in the U.S. by Outreach Magazine. He has a BA in psychology from Wichita State University, a master's in divinity from Golden State Seminary, and a Master of Arts in biblical counseling from Colorado Christian University. He's married to Carissa and is the father of 5 children. And if that all is not enough, he is the author of the newly released book titled Love Hacks, 10 Skills for Making Your Relationships More Life-Giving. Please help me welcome Ron Johnson.
Hey, so great to meet you, Jude. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for being here,
man. You did a great job building your podcast.
Hey, I know that happens in about 1 minute with Joe Rogan and some of these other guys, but hey, that's been a year long push here, which, you know, it's baby steps, but that's okay. That's exciting. I'm just so blessed, and I'm so absolutely ecstatic the growth and the community that's starting to build. So
I appreciate what you're doing. I mean, I'm a divorced dad. Remember being a single dad and how over my head I felt all the time. And so what you're doing is really important, and there's a huge need for it. So thank you for serving us.
Well, it's my pleasure. And on that note, so Love Hacks, you just released that. Tell us, before we get into the book, a little bit about yourself, because one of the things I appreciated, not only in the book, but also in your sermons, is that you share a lot about your first marriage and your divorce and going through that, and now your second marriage. So, you know, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, and then maybe a little bit about that, kind of the just prep things for talking about the book.
Sure. Yeah. So grew up all over the country, became a Christ follower at 16. I was pre-med in college, felt called to go into ministry, just a weird night where I had probably had too much caffeine, but made a huge pivot, didn't even go to church, but started just being involved with ministry. And then met my former wife. She was the girl next door, and met her through a friend. And then we married at the age of 23. So pretty young. We were married for 26 years and have 3 amazing kids to show for our marriage. Had a very difficult marriage, discovered pretty early on about some just mental issues that she faced, and weathered 5 affairs over the course of 26 years that she had. You know, I coped and medicated myself with just trying to be successful in ministry. And I got more love at work usually than I got when I came home. And so that was a big issue on my side of the fence. And, you know, came in with not a whole lot of tools when it came to emotional intelligence or understanding what I was dealing with. And so we did our best and got a lot of counseling. I got that second master's degree you mentioned earlier, trying to figure myself out. Trying to save my own marriage. We probably spent, maybe $60,000, $70,000 on therapy, trying to figure us out. And then finally, she found somebody else and decided to call it quits. So got divorced, which had been 9 years ago. No, like 8 years ago. Got divorced, and then thought I'd never get married again. I kind of made a vow. I went out with a really wonderful woman, but you could just tell she wasn't able to attach. She'd gone through a lot of difficulty in her previous marriage. Her husband left her for somebody else. So I thought, man, I'm not going to get hurt again. I'm not going to date. I'm just going to love my church. I'm going to plant a lot of churches. I'm going to hunt and fish. I'm going to buy an Airstream and die in a trailer with a dog, my lap somewhere next to a river. Just go out that way, and then got into the plans. So I had a men's group of single guys who were all divorced. And I go, hey, you guys have to teach me how to be single again. And they go, well, make you a deal. We'll do that. And you help us grow in the ways of Jesus. One of the guys in that group introduced me to Carissa. So I go, well, prayed about it for 2 weeks. I go, all right, I'll put my foot back in the water and go out with her. And the rest, they say, is history. We fell in love very quickly. Super healthy woman, never been married, younger than me. I hadn't thought about that. I made my list of what I want and don't want. I didn't think about the age, but guys we can quickly adjust to being with someone younger than us.
Sure we do.
So we got married 5 years ago, and we have 2 great kids, a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. Never thought I'd be a dad at 58 again, but here I am.
Wow.
And,
keeps you young.
It's either aging me or making me younger. I'm not sure, but maybe both, I guess. But she's been a joy. Like, our marriage is really great, very, very strong. I mean, I tell people all the time, I can do anything with Chris. I can clean toilets with Carissa, and it's a good day. And I think it's just God's grace and gift in my life. And a lot of healing took place from my therapy and doing divorce recovery groups and just time, but she's been the key catalyst in my healing.
That's
just
phenomenal.
Having somebody who knows me, sees me, and loves me the way she does.
That's phenomenal. So I really appreciate the Love Hacks book, because it's something, after reading, I thought, oh, I wish I had this in my 20s, right? Before that, in my teens, maybe when I started to date. And because, like so many men, I didn't have anybody that really taught me how to date, taught me what to think about, what to look for. And your 10 love hacks are really that. It's a guide for, okay, this is kind of a step-by-step process to kind of, and it's not in intimate detail, but kind of what you need to be thinking about when you're dating before you start to make that commitment. So my first question is, so was it after your healthy relationship with Carissa that you were like, okay, now I kind of got this figured out. Maybe I can write some of this down. What kind of prompted you to write it?
Thank you for asking. I got to think back. So I did a series at Restoration called Love Hacks. I've done it twice now. Mm-hmm. So I did it 3 years ago, and several people go, you need to turn that into a book. That was really, really helpful. Mm-hmm. So I go, and I've been asked to write books in the past. I've never considered myself an author, and candidly, I don't consider myself to be much of one now either. I'm more of a leader and a church planting catalyst. I love pastoring people. But people kept saying, you need to turn that into a book. So I sent the manuscripts to India, I had them transcribed. And then I literally worked like 5 to 10 minutes, probably 3 or 4 days a week, right up until I published it, because I just didn't have a lot of time. I'm newly married, got kids, I've got a lot of responsibilities. But I think what prompted it was kind of what you just said. I wish I had this kind of a book when I was younger. And then I thought I would love to have had this book right after I got divorced, because I have a chapter on divorce, remarriage. And, and I've just watched a lot of my friends go through a divorce and then make the exact same mistake, like basically married the same woman with a different hair color and right back in the same place. And that is the most painful thing to watch. Like, it's hard enough to go through one divorce, but to go through multiple and for the same reasons. Right. So I thought I'm going to write a book and talk about things like, what to look for in a mate, and how to think about intimacy maybe in a different way. Mm-hmm. And talk about really what I've learned is the bond is the marriage. If I look at my previous marriage, I realized we never had a bond. Like that deep attachment was never there. So we kept trying to rekindle something that didn't exist. Right. So those are some of the motivating factors for me.
Right. So there's 10 love hacks. The one, when I was reading it and when I was listening to you, that struck me was the one that you just hit on a little bit, was your third one, which building intimacy, and how you describe that with the different strands and how that creates. Talk us through that just a little bit, because I think it's incredibly important, particularly for those men that are interested again in getting into a relationship, but are very afraid of making those same mistakes like you did. Now, those are the ones that are much smarter than me that are listening, because I did what you described, like get back in the next relationship, pow, bang your head against the wall, get in the next one, bang my head against the wall, until I finally figured out, oh yeah, I'm the common denominator. So I started figuring myself out. And then now I'm finally healthy where I can get into a relationship. But I hear from a lot of men, oh, I'm a little bit afraid. What are some, steps? That one I really, really liked. Talk with us about that a little bit.
Let me I'll get to chapter 3, but I get a little context. So on that note, I think it's chapter 1. I don't have the index in front of me where I tell what to look for in a mate.
Yes.
I had, a lot of guys have the wrong list. So I'm trying to get some help with getting the right list. I think, I had my list partly on point, partly off. And like, for example, I went out with somebody who was healthy in so many ways, but not emotionally healed yet. So give me a little checklist. But the reason chapter 3 was written was because of my experience that led to chapter 2. I went to my therapist one day who'd seen us. He was our marriage therapist and knew my ex really, really well. We'd seen him for over a decade. And there's things you can say to somebody after their marriage is over, you cannot say to them when they are married to that person, because every therapist wants to keep the marriage together if they're a good therapist, unless it's just super toxic and unhealthy, of course. And he told me, you were never really married. I said, what? We were married for 26 years. The formula says I got to pay alimony for 13 years. What do you mean we weren't married? I'd like to have known that before I went to court. And he said, no, you never had a bond. I go, wow. So, and I just kept asking questions. What is a bond? What's the nature of it? Why is it so important? And he said, yeah, you kept trying to rebuild something that never was there. It's like you want to rebuild the fire, but you don't have a spark because you never had one. It wasn't like we didn't have an attraction, we didn't have things in common, that we didn't ever love each other. But that deep attachment, he said, that was not there. And I had to own part of that, but I also, because of the abuse in the past, my ex, she just couldn't give her heart in such ways to truly attach. And then he said, you should do some Bible study on this. So I went to Genesis, went back, and I've been reading all the passages in divorce, remarriage. And I went to Genesis 2:24 because there's a principle in interpreting scripture. It's called the principle of first mention. Anytime there's a first mention of a topic, you go, okay, this is setting the direction for everything else. And I know some of your listeners are Christians, some are not, and some know the Bible and some don't. But if you can look at Genesis as being a theological treatise, or you can look at it archetypally if you're not a Christian, if you want. You got the first marriage, you got Adam and Eve, and you have this purpose that is given to them. It's like a teleological principle. Here's what the purpose of marriage is, for a principle that's in Genesis 2:24. And it says, for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they will become one flesh. So being a nerd, a Bible nerd, I got into the Hebrew very in depth. And the word there for united, it is debak. And debak in Hebrew means to bond or to attach. And so what is being said there is the bond is the marriage. Before there was wedding ceremonies and the institution of marriage and the multi-billion-dollar wedding, sector of society out there. I would see a couple, like some Paleolithic couple, and they'd be talking about whatever, the upside of their diet or something. And then he would see how there was an attachment between the two of them. And he'd say, okay, now that's what I'm talking about. That's marriage. They've got this deep, deep bond. Yeah, we still need vows, and we need to, sign up license, because that kind of protects the bond. It sort of validates the bond. It makes the bond public. But the bond precedes the vows. And that's what really is marriage. So then the next thing says one flesh. So the result of the bond is a one flesh relationship. One flesh means intimacy. So I began to think about that. What's the meaning of a one flesh relationship? It's obviously a sexual metaphor, but it's way more than that. And so as I began to unpack the scriptures and look at what it means to have an intimate relationship, I came up with 6 strands, kind of like a rope. And you need all 6 strands to have a strong marriage. And the cool thing is, the intimacy is what creates a life-giving marriage. But most guys, when they think of intimacy, they think of sex. Right. And they might think of something else, like, hey, a buddy to go to games with, or, a partner in life that makes them less lonely. But we need a more full-orbed understanding of intimacy. And the cool thing is, as intimacy grows, the bond gets stronger, and so the relationship gets stronger. So the 6 strands of the rope, as I try to articulate them in the book, are, First of all, you have the intellectual strand, like a mental intellectual connection. You talk about things that are interesting to you, whether it be a hobby you share, or maybe you're into wine or politics, whatever. But there's got to be an intellectual engagement in order to have intimacy. Then there's the physical strand. So the physical strand is not sexual; it's touch, it's affection, it's being near each other. There's a law called the law of propinquity that states that the more time you spend with somebody, the more likely it is you're going to become more affectionate towards them, emotionally connect with them. Then there's the emotional strand, which if you look at most of the research now on attachment, like I'm talking about, like oh gosh, what's his name now? The guy that wrote 7 Principles of Marriage, Why Marriage is John Gottman. Most of the research indicates if you don't have a deep emotional connection, Sue Johnson, her research indicates the same thing. She's written a book called Hold Me Tight. The emotional connection is so critical to strengthening the bond, like being known and knowing the other person, being able to read their feelings, and being able to develop the EQ to have a deep emotional connection. Super important. Then, of course, you have the sexual connection. All the research indicates if you have a strong emotional connection, the sex is going to take care of itself. All the therapists, I'd say this, that all the therapies that are designed to focus on technique are very non-efficacious. They don't really lead to good sex. Fix the emotional connection, sex is going to happen. And then let's see, what am I forgetting here? I call it the missional strand in the book. Like having a common purpose, a common mission is really, really important. And then the spiritual connection, like there's research that indicates that if you share intimate requests on a regular basis, like preferably daily, and pray together, you have less than a 1% chance of getting a divorce. So there's research like George Barna, he's a researcher on the West Coast. He did a bunch of research. He found that couples that do that on a regular basis, preferably daily, have less than a 1% chance of getting a divorce.
Wow, that's fun. So, that's phenomenal. So, so at least you had a list of wants, right? which is the first thing, right? And a lot of guys are just, oh, she's good looking, right? Or she's really hot, let's go out. And then they get stuck in that, right? You get stuck in that. And there's a book called The Tactical Guide to Women. And in it, I've got it right here. It's by Sean Smith, who's actually out of Denver, Colorado also. And he talks about that also, of like understanding who you are and what you want in your list of wants, which you referred to also, because you can't really, it's kind of like going shopping for anything for a car, right? If you don't know that you need a truck or a car or whatever, how are you going to go out? You're just going to go out and like the first car that you see, you're going to buy. And not that that's kind of a generic analogy, right? Not that we're comparing women to trucks, or they do in some country songs, but we're not saying that at all. It's just the philosophy and idea around that. But then once you do building that attachment and all of those different attachment that you just described. And so to take what you were saying is you described it as the 4 strands as a rope. And if you look and you pull apart a rope, you've got different strands like that. And if you pull them up, if you pull each one apart, each one itself is not very strong, but when you twist them together and then you pull them, it makes it much, much stronger and builds builds a tension on that is very, very strong for a very long time, unless something breaks or something.
I think the strands should inform our list. So I actually had a list of 48 qualities, which is pretty psycho. Yeah, pretty psycho.
Poor
and this is even though I thought I'd never
she's got to be phenomenal. Wow.
Well, I had 5 non-essentials, and then I had 43 non-essentials and 5 essentials. Okay. So my essentials were informed by my understanding of intimacy, not completely, but I go, okay. Must be able to attach. Like a lot of women cannot attach. They give the heart away over and over again. And us guys, we got to take some responsibility for this. Like a lot of us are serial women damagers. Candidly, we go in, we know how to like woo and seduce, and then we get what we want. Then we go, hey, moving on. Well, that happens often enough to a woman, and she's like, I'm not giving my heart to any guy because they all do the same thing to me. So, a lot of women just flat can't attach. That they're just so broken. Unless they do a lot of work, they don't know how to attach. So I go, can she attach? Is she healthy that way?
Yeah.
Spiritually, are we compatible? That's obviously very important to have a pastor and God is the most important thing in my life. I go, I need somebody who doesn't just say they're a Christian, goes to church once in a while. Like, they really, truly love and pursue God. And then I had a few other things. Like, I wanted somebody who didn't just love me, but liked me, but I needed both,
Yeah.
I think my spouse tried to love me, but I don't think she really liked me, my first spouse. And
Yeah.
so I had my 5 qualities, and I had a bunch of just goofy stuff that I could take or leave, like loves to backpack, likes to travel, so I go, hey, this is nice to have, but I don't have to have these things.
Right. And being intentional about that, and then being intentional about the attachment part of it, I feel is huge also. And Scott Stanley's got a great book called The Power of Commitment, along those lines, that talks about being intentional and not, and writing a list, having 48 things, understanding the 6 strands that you need to develop, and then going forward in developing that for the relationship, as opposed to, like I described and like I was guilty of, right? As dating, she's really good looking, I like being out with her. Oh, let's date some more. Oh, we're gonna have sex. Oh, we're having sex. Oh, we're gonna move in together. Oh, not, and he calls it backsliding. And then it gets to the point you're like, well, let's get married. Oh, well, that's backsliding. That's not, that doesn't build a solid relationship. That doesn't build intimacy. That's not commitment. None of that is a recipe for a successful marriage.
Right.
And that's what I did. So what are some of the challenges that you see for men and women in general, or divorced dads also, in building that those strands and creating that intimacy and that bond?
We just describe the most common pattern you see, again, men and women.
Yeah.
Either before they have their first marriage or after they've been divorced and are kind of back in the game, that's the exact pattern. You find somebody you're attracted to. So, okay, well, great. You got an attraction strand. Attraction is important. We tend to overrate it as guys. We kind of want the 9s and the 10s.
Or confuse it as love.
Yeah, we think attraction is love. And often, then, just to be frank, a lot of the 9s and 10s have not had to work on their character or their emotional intelligence or their spiritual life. And so lacking a lot of the tools that guys really need to have a really important, or like a really life-giving bond with somebody. Yeah. So we go with attraction, then we get sexually, involved. And when that happens, tons of research on the physiology, tons of oxytocin gets released. We start bonding to somebody at that level without having those other strands of connection. So we have a sexual connection, we have an attraction. We might enjoy doing certain things together. We got a golf buddy, for example, or a biking buddy. Mm-hmm. But we that becomes the primary currency of the relationship. And then we don't develop the strands that are actually going to help us sustain and mature a marriage and mature the love of the marriage, which are the emotional and spiritual and intellectual strands and the missional strands. Like, do we have the same values? Are we heading towards the same goals? That kind of thing.
Right.
So I would say, become self-aware of these different types of intimacy that are important for a marriage, and then put that on your list. Yeah. So is this woman emotionally healthy? Do we have a common purpose? What's her spiritual life? Do I have a spiritual life? Does she have one? We have a common path we're on spiritually.
Right. So you'd say that some of the biggest challenges are not being self-aware and understanding yourself, or this, these strands, or this process that you need to go through. So with that said, then what are some tips or some ways that men can overcome that, particularly in a society right now that, like, you and I are talking about it, and maybe some in our world are talking about that a little bit, but I'm not seeing commercials out there for build intimacy or learn how to bond. It's it's more of the quick dating, or get on the dating site, or whatever. Right. You alluded to how to woo or whatever. Those are the ones that you seem to see out there. So how do you overcome all of that, what I would say, nonsense and wrong messaging, to get to this and really dig into this and build what you want? Because it's painful if you don't. You're going to keep, like you said earlier, keep reliving the same relationship.
Yeah, I would say to divorced guys, which is your audience primarily, don't waste your pain and become a learner. Like the guys who get divorced, but they don't learn, they don't look back, they don't take responsibility for like, okay, what did I do? How did I contribute? How did I even get there? How did I get in the marriage? And then what did I do that wasn't so helpful during the marriage? You just owning stuff, not to go beat yourself up. But if you don't learn, you're going to repeat the pattern.
Yeah.
Most guys don't like to read, or they're not like, they learn in the areas where they value things the most. Like they'll go to the seminars to excel at work.
Yeah.
Or if they're into motorcycles, they'll get motorcycle magazines, or YouTube stuff. If they hunt, they'll watch Meat Eater.
Right.
But most guys don't get super excited about learning about relationships.
Right.
It tends to be more of a female value than a male value. Right. But if they're going to have a life-giving marriage, which I think we all want, we got to be learners. That's why I commend you, Jude, because this podcast, guys will listen to a podcast way before they're going to read a book like mine.
Yeah.
But I wrote my book with guys in mind. That's why I kept the chapter short, the book short, and I did an audio version. So guys can listen to it while they're going to work, or at the gym.
Exactly.
So I think it's on us to kind of go, well, how do guys learn, and how can we create tools that make it easier for them to access knowledge and become more self-aware and aware of what's going to take to build a good marriage in the future.
Yeah, that's perfect. So I find that guys going through divorce, and I know that you've alluded to this, and I know that this was mine. My experience is it's incredibly painful, and I describe it as being broken wide open. So it's a great time to do that self-reflection and try to understand what it is that you brought to the table or didn't bring to the table, what those behaviors were that you need to understand in order to be successful the next time around, which was the first thing that you said. And then do the work, right? Yeah. Just do the work. Don't get distracted. There's a million distractions out there too. On top of all the wrong messaging, there's the distractions we could be distracted from the minute we wake up to the minute we go to sleep every single night. Yeah. So
I agree. One of the reasons I'm a Christ follower is because I believe God uses us and does his best work through us and through us in the lives of others, not in spite of our weaknesses and mistakes, but because of them. It's like you and I both have gone through a divorce. We both made our mistakes. We made bad choices, but we're trying to learn from it so we can help other people.
Right.
And we want to redeem the mess. And so I want that for every guy. Like, you get a divorce, you take a major self-esteem hit, you feel like a loser. You wonder if you're spoiled goods, but you can turn it into something really beautiful if you do your work.
Yeah, it can be an opportunity. It can be a 2.0 opportunity for a different life. And you describe, and every time you talk about Carissa and, your new marriage, your second marriage it's beautiful because there is the ability to have that a second time around. And I know guys listening out there, some of them might be just going through it right now and go, are you crazy? Opportunity. This is terrible. I don't ever want to deal with this. I don't want to get in, I don't even want to set myself up for this. But if you do the work, if you do pay attention, if you do make the effort, there is the ability to learn from it, just like anything, okay, that you might fail at the first time. And hopefully we're not getting into a ton of relationships and marriages. So, we do it a handful of times in life. It's not like when we're learning another skill where we do it 10,000 times to become proficient at it, right? So hopefully you haven't dated 10,000 women before you get married. I mean, that would be exhausting, but maybe, but you would probably become pretty proficient at it, right? And try to understand. We don't do that. So we got to give ourselves a little bit of grace and also know that if we do put the effort in, that you can be successful. Again, you're proof of it. This book, and again, the book is Love Hacks. It's 10 skills for making a relationship more life-giving. And we'll put a link in the show notes to that too, but you can buy it on Amazon. Last, where can people connect with you, Ron, and where can they find the book and reach out?
You can get the book on Amazon, and if you do read it, please review it. I'm trying to get my reviews up right now.
All right.
I'm not a author, so you self-publish. Reviews are everything, but Amazon's the best way. You can follow me on Amazon. You can follow me on Facebook and on Instagram. And then our church is rst.church. So all my content, all my messages are on there, and our team. And, there's guys who are looking for a community, a really healthy community where they can grow spiritually. If that's something they feel like is a felt need in their life, here in Denver, come join us. If you're at other places in the country, you can join us online.
Yeah. And on that note, just briefly tell us about the simple churches that are
Sure.
also part of RST, because I know that's a cool thing. And I've started one with the I call it Divorce Dad edition of the Simple Church. And, just share with us a couple minutes about that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, again, you can learn more at rst.church. We have a whole page on Simple Church, and it's pretty helpful to describing what makes it work and how to start one, how to be in one. But during COVID, after we made the pivot digitally and kind of got our act together there, since we couldn't physically gather, we began to evaluate, are we really making, are we creating ministries and making true disciples of Jesus? Because if you're truly a disciple of Jesus, you're going to be distinct. You're going to stand out. There should be more love. There should be more joy. There should be like things that you do that other people don't do, and things that you do that people are curious about, like where you help the poor, you care about your friends, you're a little lighter on your feet, you're less anxious. We go, we're not doing a great job at all those things, honestly. And so we began to evaluate our ministries and even our small groups, which are great, but they really weren't creating that much transformation. So we were very unhappy with that. So we go, let's try something different. I did a bunch of research in third world settings about like, why are these Christ followers so fired up, and why are they attracting so many people to Jesus? And I realized most of them don't meet a big building. They don't have any computers. They don't have access to books. They need little gatherings, usually in homes. So we go, what if we can replicate that? So a simple church is very simple. You have a handful of guys. You can meet face to face, although most are still meeting on Zoom. It's just easier, no traffic, that kind of thing. And then we ask 7 questions. What are you grateful for? What's challenging you? Did you do your I will statement, which is an accountability question? I'll get to that in a minute. That's nice. Looking back. We look up, read a short passage of scripture, and we ask 2 questions, because we have a lot of non-Christians in our simple churches. Mm-hmm. So the questions are very generic. What's it say about God? What's it say about us? Last 2 questions, we look ahead, and this is where we get traction. What's your I will statement? If you assume there's at least some truth in here, how can you apply it to your life? What will you do because of this information that could lead to you becoming a better person, or if you're going the way of Jesus, more like Jesus? Last question, given what you know about your faith right now, how can you share what you're learning with other people? So 7 questions, no preparation. Everybody shows up. They know the agenda. It takes about 45 minutes usually to an hour. I've got a bunch of CEOs in my group. We meet once a month for an hour. Most of them meet like twice a month.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. And while we're going through the divorce, and a lot of guys listening, we talk about the mental, emotional, physical, and making sure you're taking care of all of those things. But that 4th leg of that stool is the spiritual part of it. And what I'm finding is this is a great opportunity so you don't drive to, you're not spending the time, you're spending it in a community with whomever you choose. Like ours is the other divorced dads, but there's other different communities too. So it's really, really phenomenal. It's really awesome. And
it's
just
a
cool
spiritual
thing.
Accelerator at the end of the day. It just accelerates growth.
Yeah. And they can find more information at rstchurch.org.
rst.church. Just letters. RST stands for restoration, then .church. And you can get a lot of content there.
Awesome. Ron Johnson, the book is Love Hacks. Go buy it. It's an easy, like I could probably fish with one hand and read. And like in an afternoon of fishing and reading, I could get the book done and hopefully also catch some fish. So well done. It's like perfect. If you've enjoyed this and found any value in it today, please, like Ron said, go and write some reviews of the book, review the channel, subscribe, share with everybody. The more that we're sharing, the more people we're reaching and helping out. Ron, thanks so much. Jude. It was a pleasure. Take care.
My honor. Thank you so much.